we need to keep it in proportion. Most of the contents of the report were sort of known already. There have been some new aspects of various things that have developed today.
But let's pick you up on that one, because the Home Secretary, Theresa May, says policing stands damaged as a result of this report. So you don't have political support on this one.
The police haven't had political support for the last 3 or 4 years. I don't know why, but this is an opportunity for them to make comments like that, Jack Straw's hyperbolic comments about institutional corruption. If you actually read the Ellison report, there's mention of one officer where there are reasonable grounds to suspect corruption, and no mention of corruption in any other context in relation to this.
Look at Hillsborough, look at what's happened to the Duggan report. There are plenty of examples. Has it ever been so low for the police in this country?
If you look at the public confidence in policing, current rate 65%, compared to 18% for politicians and 21% for journalists. And 65% is about as high as it's been for the last 30 years. If you actually speak to ordinary people, they realise that these are unique situations not affecting day-to-day policing, and they're not having the effect that a lot of people are claiming that they're having on confidence.
OK, let's get Lee Jasper's opinion. Is he right? Does the general public not care so much, or are not so bothered with what this report says has been going on?
No, I think, with all due respect, I think Peter's living in another universe. This is deeply damaging to the Met, an ongoing series of calamities. You know, even the Met Commissioner is compromised, current Met Commissioner. It was his report in 2012 that reassured the Lawrences there wasn't any corruption at all involved in the investigation of the murder. And lo and behold, the Ellison report has found that not only was there may have been corruption, but there was substantial withholding of key evidence to the Lawrence inquiry initially. This is the darkest day for the Metropolitan Police Service. I think the Met Commissioner ought to resign, and resign now.
Even though this has nothing to do with him?
Well, he produced a report in 2012, the Metropolitan Police Service review, that guaranteed and reconfirmed to the Lawrences no corruption was involved in this case. What he didn't say is all the evidence that Ellison has now uncovered had been withheld from the inquiry, and that there was substantive evidence to point to corruption in the original murder investigation.
Should he go, Peter Kirkham? Is this your darkest day, as Lee Jasper says?
I don't think it is. As I say, there are new revelations here, and there are issues, and there are issues that this Commissioner is responsible for. There have been letters written in the last year or two talking about what was revealed and what wasn't. But we've got to look at...
So you can state that corruption is not a widespread problem here in the UK police force.
And I'd like to say why. I'd like to say why.
I can.
OK, you say why and then you say why not. You start first.
There have been, since the 80s and 90s, numerous corruption inquiries. A huge number of corrupt officers were cleaned out during the 80s and early 90s. And then in the late 90s, the CIB3 and the Ghost Squad were put into place. Paul Condon, I think, said there were 250 corrupt officers. They've spent millions, and they found some, not very many. In my experience, there are not corrupt officers, as in selling information, as in working with organised criminals. You can define corruption in any number of ways, but proper corruption.
Lee Jasper, does that answer your question?
It's ludicrous because, of course, the officers who are named in the Ellison report were part of the South East Regional Crime Squad, which was disbanded because of his absolute corrupt activity of recycling drugs back to the community, even though they were involved. The key officer was involved. There was a culture of corruption at the time, and Plebgate tells us today that there are elements of that culture.
But Lee Jasper, do you also acknowledge there are thousands of police officers up and down this country who are doing a great job for us
on a daily basis, being let down by a small amount of their colleagues who are bringing the whole organisation into disgrace?
And very briefly, Peter Kirkham, if you were the Met Commissioner tonight, what would you be doing?
I'd be talking to my officers and trying to raise morale, which is at rock bottom.